So anyway, after failing multiple times at tech startups, the one thing I will say is I had to build a good team each and every time, and they failed for various reasons. But I'm confident that it was never because that our whole team was not good. I moved from there to Tech Launch Arizona, where I specifically spent time working on building teams around startup companies, and now all of you are stuck with me here. Specifically, I'm going to draw on the experience that I had working with NTLA, launching startup companies based on university IP, where I managed a 1,600 person network, of which for no money whatsoever, I got 500 connections done. So that was an individual who engaged or who connected with a startup team for a meeting to provide advice, whatever. Over 200 engagements where individuals connected with one of our startup teams for a period of 3 months or longer, and over 29 placements of individuals to connect with or to be a part of a startup launching out of the University of Arizona. So not to say that I know what I'm talking about, but I think I failed at enough things to know maybe what to watch out for. So that's the experience I'm going to draw on when we talk about teaming. A lot of this is going to be a review, but it's important to take this to heart and think about in the context of what the startup is doing right now. How can a team help? And I can certainly tell you some statistics on how a team can help, because when you don't have a good team, you're certainly failing, right? So 70% of why a venture capital deal does or does not happen is due to that team. Furthermore, I know this is a reference from 2014, but it still rings true. CB Insights stated that number 3 reason for why startups fail is not the right team. So if you think about the problems that you have or where you'd like to go, I can probably draw back to every single one of them, how team is going to impact that. And so when you think about, my end game is I need to get investment. So all I need to do is be connecting to investors. I'm going to ask you about your team first. As you heard on Monday, the Desert Angels workshop, team is very important. If you don't have the right team, if you don't have the right, advisors and board to back you up, you're not going to get that investment. And the same is going to go for customers. Furthermore, I really like this statistic as well. Diverse teams are important. So when you can, try to build diverse teams. This is a Clover Pop study, and the source came from Forbes. Did over 200 business teams and evaluated over 600 different decisions. And those that had age, gender, and geographic diversity, as you can see, made much better decisions most of the time. So let's talk about teams. Anybody tell me really quick what this startup team was? What company did they make?
Facebook.
So I love to show this picture when I talk about teams, because this is what you think of when you think of a startup team. I can tell you, knowing all the companies here, this is not what our teams look like, and they all look completely different. And so when you think about the nature of a team, right, you initially think of a hierarchy, and many of you within your startup companies, have yourselves as the CTO or the director of or the CEO, right? And that's what we think about when we think about companies. But in reality, how many of you just do that one thing inside of your company, right? So you might be the CEO, but you're probably also paying some bills and getting toilet paper, right? So this hierarchy, this traditional hierarchy for producing companies or organizations that have been around for a while, just doesn't work. Sometimes it's good to define, maybe what you're responsible for, but in terms of how you act and what you're looking for, you shouldn't always be thinking about that hierarchy at first, right? At first. It's more like this, right? It doesn't matter, right? You got the Grand Poobah and the less Grand Poobah and Inky and Blinky and Dinky and Clyde. It might as well look like this. In the context of a startup, what you're less looking for is the title of a role. What you're more looking for is a gap filler. What I mean by that is this. So there are a number of different ways to evaluate teams. I pulled Born to Build by Jim Clifton. If you haven't read this book, I definitely suggest this. And just as many of these other theories do, he categorized teams in the context of a rainmaker, a conductor, and an expert. Rainmaker has drive, persistence, and grit. Typically is what you might consider like a CEO. The conductor is the doer, management, and this would be like a COO and an expert who provides that expertise, right? The expert is oftentimes in a startup company, the technical person, So I could take any team and you can kind of break it down to some of these theories. If you take our team at UACI, and there's others as well. If you take our team at UACI alone, my job, right, and what I'm good at is more of the rainmaker. I'm probably less positive on the details, but more positive on the vision and the strategy on how to maybe get us there. Anybody who knows Anita knows that Anita is the conductor, right? I mean, it says holds the organization together, but she understands how to make things happen for us, right? So when I have a crazy idea, she understands how to make it happen. And then we have an expert, right? So if you think of Steve as our mentor in residence, he's kind of like an expert. So what you should be doing in your startup company, rather than saying, oh, I need a marketing person because I'm going to need to market my stuff. Well, I mean, all of that is really duh. I'm going to need a salesperson because I need to sell my stuff. When you're in the early stages of building your team, when you are just starting to sell a product or you have not sold product yet, and you're building a founding and startup team, what you really need is to identify your strengths, what you're good at, where you're going to hold accountability, and then you're going to be able to identify where your gaps are. So let's take this grand poobah hierarchy that I presented earlier, and let's fill in, the rainmaker, conductor, expert, hustler. So if you think of this as your team, you're like, okay, we've got an operations person here that is really good at getting down to the details, to understanding what's happening. They're going to execute on this paperwork. They're going to make it happen. We've got somebody that we pulled from the university where this technology came from, totally knows everything about it, is our expert. And the student graduated and, is motivated and has all the time in the world and can talk anybody's head off. We've got a hustler, and that's our team, right? Okay, well, where's your rainmaker, right? Who's the CEO that's bringing this all together? And so this is where you begin to think about your gaps. Really easy to identify gaps when you're just one person. So what you think about is, what do I not want to do? What am I not good at? And what am I good at? Do I fit within that technical expert part? Am I like the CTO, the CSO? In which case, am I willing to give up the reins and bring in a CEO? The answer should be yes to that if you're in that particular case, because that is how you're going to be successful. So you've identified your strengths, found your gaps. Now you got to find people. And again, when you speak with our SME or MIR or our staff about this, they can go into cleaner details. LinkedIn is an incredible tool for finding people. A quick hint about that is, look for similar startups in your space that have sold, and then find the people that were on the founding team of that startup, and then reach out to those people through LinkedIn because they're probably available or within a larger company that acquired them. And oftentimes those people become serial entrepreneurs, want to jump out and do it again. LinkedIn Premium, I think if you're going to pay for anything, LinkedIn Premium is the thing to pay for because you have some in-message contacts. So you can contact people that you don't even have emails for nor are connected with. I have seen startups, and I have done it myself, put posts on things like Indeed or AngelList or some of the other platforms out there. The top right is not possible at the moment, but look at networking, and there are virtual networking opportunities, and you can also find individuals through the university, which we have and are currently helping companies do. Great students that want to stay here, or researchers that might want to get involved, whatever it might be. A couple of ways to find people. And so let's say you've identified your strengths, you figured out where your gaps are, you found some folks that you want to engage, and now what are you going to offer? And I'm not going to explain these in depth. Again, this is just a primer, but you can offer them money. If most of you have money, that's great. But oftentimes startups do not have money to offer that, or that money is parsed out for something else, in which case you can offer equity in your company, a slice of the pie, a percentage of the ownership of the company, so that you all have stake in the company's success, and you can reap the benefits down the line. And oftentimes it's based on some milestones. So it's that little bridge picture there. So when we receive investment, we'll have a percentage of equity in the company. When we receive investment, okay, then we're going to start getting paid. Or oftentimes it's based on, some kind of contract like an SBIR, some award like that. When we receive our SBIR, we'll be written into that, and you'll be able to receive funds for the duration of that. So there's a number of different ways that startups offer. There are more than this, but these are typically kind of the top ones. really quickly then. So if you're not offering somebody a strict salary, how do you get people to join your startup? And if any of you tell me that people are going to join your startup because it is the best technology out there, or because you think it's, you know, incredible and it will change the world, that's not why people join startup teams. It's not because you think it's incredible. People join startup teams, in my opinion, and based on my experience, and, you know, for one of three reasons. There's some reciprocity involved, right? They feel that there is an exchange, that they will receive, you know, something in return for this, right? The big one is an affinity. They have an affinity, they have an understanding or a liking for your industry, for what the problem that you're trying to solve. They've experienced the problem themselves. They have an affinity towards you. They have an affinity towards Tucson or the university, whatever it might be. They have some affinity or liking for what you're doing, or value. They find that you know, based on your ability to sell the vision for the company, not the technology, that there could be value for them down the line. If you have not worked out a cap table for your startup company, specifically if you have people that you have offered equity to, this is the first thing that you should be talking about with our staff or Steve. So if you have not been exposed to a capitalization table, I'm not going to go into how to build these or what these mean, but this is the guiding light around where the chunks of your company are formed. So if you're offering equity in your company, and then let's say you go to an investor, the first thing they're going to want to see is your capitalization table. Your cap table talks about where the equity is. Your cap table gives that investor the ability to look into, you know, company ownership and determine how they're going to be diluted out, maybe, or how their ownership is going to dilute, and what that could look like in the context of a return on their investment down the line. So if you do not have a cap table built, if your cap table is just I own 51% and Joe owns 49, this is something that we should be working on with you. If you don't listen to anything else, I encourage you to listen to this piece here. And some of you will disagree with me intensely, and that's okay. But I have found more success in working with startup companies and getting them really good co-founders or CEOs or whatever they need, when they first and foremost realize that you need that external person more than they need you. This is your baby, this is your vision, and that's true. But if it's going to be successful, you need to build a team around it. Specifically, if you need a CEO, this drops even lower. You are not offering a salary. If you are, that's great. If you're offering a salary and benefits, full salary, full benefits at a rate of pay that is comparable with industry, if you are not offering that, then you need them more than they need you. Because you're offering your dream, you're offering what I call world peace, right? You know, it's something that could be awesome in the future, or you're offering them very little financial or monetary reciprocity. And so when you go at it in this perspective, when you think of your conversations with people as less of I'm interviewing them to be my CEO, for example, but more I need to recruit them, or I need to sell this vision to them so that they are on board with what I'm talking about here. So they too see my vision. When you begin to have this train of thought, things start to click a little bit more. So then we do trust walks and circles and trust falls. No, when you engage with people, you do want to build trust, right? And this is, again, not a traditional relationship where you're a boss and they're an employee. If it is, in some cases, some of you do have this, but in a lot of cases it is not. You need to begin by building trust, and you don't just have a conversation or two or three with people and then decide, okay, now they're going to be on my team. That's how you get into situations like Steve described. You need to first kind of identify a project and work on something with them. Very rarely have I seen 3 conversations, everybody's on board, boom, you've got a CMO. It doesn't work like that. So identify a project, right? You know, whether it is that SBIR proposal that you would work on together, or it is you have a presentation coming up, you need this person to help you build it, or it is you have some financing needs and this person is a potential CFO for you and they can help you with that first bank loan. Whatever it is, identify a project, and this allows you to begin to understand, am I going to work well with this person? This is a marriage, okay? You know, this is somebody that you're texting in the middle of the night. This is somebody that you're working with all day. This is not a traditional employment relationship in an earlier stage of a startup. So after you've identified that project and you now have determined that this is going to work, now let's add some structure to it. And now you talk about kind of traditional team building. Anybody that's been to business school, the storming, norming, performing, right? That whole deal. You can tell I've only been to business school twice. But you're adding structure to it now. And you're now starting to think about this team as something that's a little bit more like what you're used to. But it doesn't start like that. It doesn't start with 3 conversations. You bring on a CMO, they're going to take 10% equity in your company, and then you're just going to throw Microsoft project at them. It's not how it works. So you need to get to this point gradually. So this is kind of what I've learned in doing this, and how we've helped some startups do this. So does it work? I mentioned that, earlier I built that network for TLA. I'm going to use this as a quick case study. Macro, not micro, or any one individual company, 500 connections, 200 engagements of 3 months or more. Let's just say that it's 1 hour each month, which it usually is not, and 29 placements where they're working on the startup full time. If you think about that, that is 175,100 hours of people's time that they put into startup companies and received no money for, not a dollar. It is possible. If you think about what you need in the context of what I'm talking about here, then it is possible. And we have 29 pretty great placements come out of that. But you have to be thoughtful about it, and you have to maybe change your perspective ever so slightly. So I'll leave you with this. I just kind of like the quotes, and it does ring true for startup companies. Find people who are smarter than you. If you're like me, that's really easy. Invest in experience. Bring on people who can attract talented individuals. Oftentimes, investors that place CEOs within startup companies do so because they can then attract more talented individuals. Be self-aware. Identify how you want to build your company culture, and bring on people that are like that. Again, it's a marriage, or at the bottom, it's a family. So I know the teams that we have here are very close, and I do feel that family atmosphere when it works. That's what you feel. So that's it. That's all I got. I think I went probably closer to 20 minutes instead of 15. It's normally like a 45-minute presentation, so give me that. But so again, meant to be used as a primer. Not that you're supposed to understand everything in 20 minutes and now you can go off and build a rock star team, but more something for you to consider. This session is being recorded thanks to Anita, because if it were up to me, it would not be. And so we will make this available to you just as we will the last one, so that you can review this if this resonated with you, and begin to prompt, have some talking points or some thoughts on this when you're engaging with our team. I will also share, yes, Bob, thank you. And yes, we'll share the PowerPoint as well. When you open the PowerPoint, you see it has 41 slides. It's because I like to be dynamic, all right? And so it kind of flips through quickly. So I'll be quiet unless anybody has any questions, thoughts about this.
Well, in terms of diversity, is it driven by political correctness, or it is just because we need to have diversity?
Yeah, so I'm just going to recall the data, right? So if I recall the study that image was pulled from, it's because people from different backgrounds bring unique views to the company. And so it is the combination of those unique views that allows you to consider more options and explore those options. Again, everything we do is discovery in the startup world, right? So you're testing, you're hypothesizing, you're testing, you're validating, you're invalidating. And the more ideas that come to the table from varying backgrounds, the more you have to test. And so those varying experiences ultimately come together to allow you to have a fuller consideration of the problem at hand and make better decisions. So that's kind of what the data was saying from that.
Yeah. I'm looking it up. There's been several studies done, and the essence is that diverse startups have much higher return on investment and perform much better than others. So um, it's by, if you design it and if you want to add that, it's for the benefit of the startup, really.
What questions do y'all have?
Yeah, but by diversity, you mean is different backgrounds or different intellectual abilities or different?
Yeah, so specifically what this study was looking at was the all male teams versus male teams that have women included or others from other backgrounds or other identifications, varying races and varying country backgrounds. And so again, each one of us has a unique experience based on how we identify, and it's those experiences that we bring to the table. Yes, Souvenir as well. You should have diversity in the core strengths of the individuals on the team, right? It's really not good when I sit in a Desert Angels meeting, screening committee meeting, for example, and it is just a team of technical founders because all of a sudden this became a publication presentation or a paper. And so that doesn't work. And on the flip side, it's very, it's painful to watch a team of all MBAs and business founders try to talk about how they're going to create some extremely technical device, and all they need to do is get money so they can contract the technical ability to do that. Well, you're not going to get the money unless you prove that you have the technical ability in the first place. So yes, it's a combination of diverse backgrounds in the term diversity as you would see it now in the world, as well as diverse skill sets. Yes.
So one tool, if you do have a couple of people on the team, there's a book, it's called Strength Finder, and they have Strength Finder 2.0 now. And it's actually, Eric, I was thinking of that we should do that now again, especially when we have our SMEs on board, to just kind of go there. So everybody takes this test, and then it kind of spits out everybody's strength, like top 5 strengths. And ideally you want to have all the different strengths represented in your company. You don't want to have 2 or 3 people that are exactly the same. For example, like Eric mentioned, strong scientists, right? You don't want to have 3 or 4 of those. You want to have a strong scientist. You want to have a strong connector person, another one who influences, all those kinds of things. And there's definitely tools out there to assess that.
And that's not to say that, you should only have one of each, right, for the duration of your company. But when you're an early stage startup, you need to have represented skill sets and ways of working and, varying backgrounds. And then as you receive investment or you start to make money or you win SBIRs or you get customers and you do need to hire at that point, then yeah, you bring on more technical people or operations people or more people that are business oriented, depending on a continuous evaluation of your strengths and a continuous realness about your gaps. And the one thing that I'll note too, and I have a whole other presentation on this as well, is that technical. So we tend in tech startups to bucket people in kind of technical capabilities and more industry or business capabilities. Recognizing that each of those have their variances. If you think about how people communicate, people that come from a technical background, oftentimes a research background or something of that nature, they communicate very differently than people from industry. They have different timelines than people from industry. They have varying motivations from people in industry. They like to work in different spaces. I mean, there's a number of things that make teaming difficult, even if you follow everything that I talk about, because you're forging a relationship that comes from 2 very different places. And while that's why you want to do it, having those initial conversations, speaking the same language, you just want to be mindful of that. You may not. Go ahead.
In regard to that, I will make one observation, because I've been in academia too. I was a research professor of biomedical engineering at the UA before I left to help start this company.
Mm-hmm.
And it is this, a lot of technical people, especially engineers, they don't know when to quit. They don't know when you have a product that is good enough to satisfy customers. And that's part of the reason why you need a mix. You need people who have different skill sets, not technical skills, because they need to help rein the technical people in and remind them that this is a business. It's not a 10-year research project.
Yeah, absolutely. Tends to be a pitfall of engineers, technical folks, software.
Yeah.
Work on software. Yeah, and I think our groups, our teams, our startups are slightly different than this, right? I know a lot of you have also made transitions. Like Walter, you made a transition from a researcher to somebody who has technical knowledge, but was scrappy enough to build the business knowledge as well. And but yeah, we tend to think about the motivations of more technical founders as being they need something complete, right? And complete includes all the features, and it includes anticipating everything, right? And one of the ways that we combat that is through the work of customer discovery, right? And in Walter's case, and with their company, I know that you were always engaged with your customer from the get-go, from proposal on, right? And so you knew where to build it based on what they were saying. And so, that's important in Chris's case. I think some members of the team are customers of a company like his, right? And so you begin to understand, but yeah, sometimes not to over stereotype, but yeah, technical founders do have a tendency to overdevelop before it's exposed for fear of embarrassment or for fear that it's not perfect. Other thoughts or questions?
Yeah, but I guess it depends on when you're building up your team from scratch. So then rather building up a team past customer discovery. So I think there's some differences in there.
Oh yes.
Where you don't have a kind of a prototype yet because you are still on scratch. You're still looking for hypotheses.
Yep. So what I would challenge you to do, and I think we all have a tendency to do this. I've done this in the past. Well, don't think about building your team in the context of your widget or technology. You think about building the team in the context of your company. So rather than thinking, okay, I need to build my team around the prototype development, yes, that's part of the company. And of course, you don't have a company if you don't have a core technology. But really what you're thinking about is you're building the team around the company development. So if you're moving your way, for example, down the line a little bit from like government contracting, like SBIRs or other such things, and trying to move into a commercial space, what are the technology needs, the operational needs, the business needs to make that happen? Are they different than what I have now? Let's reevaluate. If you're earlier stage and you do need to build a prototype, then yes, that's certainly part of it. But if you just gear the team, if you just think about the gaps that you need to fill in the context of building a prototype, then what you've done is you've built a team of 4 or 5 people, given away a large percentage of your cap table, and what you've resulted with is a prototype, not a company that can sell a product. And so now you have to dilute everybody down further again if you're working on a cap table to bring on the people that you need to consider some of the other aspects of the company. So even in the earlier stage, when you're pre-prototype, I encourage everybody to think about the business. Think about how we're going to commercialize this. Think of a phase 1 SBIR. From the get-go, there's a commercialization section, right? And so how are you going to execute on the bullet points that you put down there? So, you know, I think that's important as well. All right. Well then, so the next step, we're going to keep doing these. I think even when we get into whenever it might be, I have no preconceived notions about this. You know, let's say that at some point we get into a phase of normalcy or more normalcy or different normalcy. We're going to continue to do this series. So, yep, I got it here virtually. So the other thing that I'd like to do, unless we have other questions or topics that you want to discuss, is I want to.
If anybody, you know, has a great example of how they've attracted team members, that's always a great, you know, thing to share. Maybe Walter and, you know, how did you and Linda get together?
Well, that was a long time ago, almost 25 years. And we started working on an engineering project, and we landed the first DARPA contract at the university that we were at, and built a big center. We were bringing in about 2 million a year at that time, which was a lot. And we wanted to start up a company, and we brought on board a financial guy and did not vet him very carefully, unfortunately. And I flunked Business 101 in the course of doing that. And what that and other experiences told me is that even as a technical person, you say, it's just business, you still have to pay attention. It may be something easy to learn, no complicated math, but you have to pay attention or you pay the price. You need people with good skills. A lot of technical people, for example, they don't have good writing skills. It's important, you know, and a lot of people that come out of a university, they've never written a proposal that's gotten funded. And that isn't a very, very important learning skill. The one for me, though, is the fact that the teams that I've been involved with have been skewed. They've been all technical, you see. And my own opinion of this is that it's perhaps not wise because in my own situation, I am finding myself spread too thin, doing things that are not technical but still must be done. And we've had to ignore certain things in the process of doing that. You can't run a business by jumping from one federal contract to another. You have to think longer term so that you have a steady income stream. When the contract is over, your bills don't stop. They keep going. And that's a pretty big mistake, actually.
But I guess, you know, a government contract is a good start to make you moving. And, you know, you have to look for some money outside but the problem is, how can we find some talent, some resource to fill in the gaps in building the company, especially if you are new to the area?
Yeah. So I alluded to a few of them on that slide with LinkedIn, et cetera. So when we send out the slides, look at that and use that as a conversation starter with your SME or mentor, right? Because it's a varied approach. And it depends on the region and it depends on what the region has to offer. Like, for example, if everybody here is looking for technical scientists right now, and you want to, and that's the gap that you're trying to fill, because you need somebody to help you on the technology side, it's science related, maybe it's bio-focused. Right now in our environment, we have hundreds of them that were just released from Icogen, right? When Icogen was bought. And that's no secret, right? We all know, well, we don't all know it, but But so you have these extremely technical people who have great experience, who are looking for something in an area that doesn't have many other icogens. And so you go find those people, right? And so, it definitely, when it comes down to it, there's some kind of theory around it, right? And I put some of that in the slide, but it really is going to take you working with us or putting some critical thought into your individual situation, the environment that you're in. So I think this is going to lead us nicely into a quick update I'd like to provide. And I think Anita's okay with it because I saw her kind of flashing the paper version of it.
Yesterday, it was so cold. And then I realized, oh, I'm talking and you can hear me. Sorry.
Yeah, I thought she was adding to this conversation.
No, I was freezing in my office and a facilities guy is here. I'll talk to you later.
Okay. So I've been talking about our program and talking about the addition of some people, some subject matter experts that we're bringing on board. So for example, again, as a review, the 4 people that we're bringing on board will represent team and board development, contracts management or SBIRs, marketing, branding, and pitching, as well as accounting and finance. And these are core functional areas. These are functional areas. It's not based on technology. It's based on function that every company needs to address. The addition of these people, as well as the addition of a bolstered and structured program, we pride ourselves in our ability to work with our companies in a customized way. And we're still going to do that, but we're going to put some structure around it to help guide us through these things. So for example, when you're talking about, you can't build a full company off of just grants. Absolutely right. So what is your non-dilutive strategy going to be? And to remind us to check in on these things, we've put together a roadmap. And this is something that we're going to use to guide ourselves and to guide you through the various aspects and things you need to consider. Even if you don't think you're there yet, you need to be exposed to some things, right? So early next week, Anita is going to send out an email that introduces this in full, but I am going to preview for the folks we have on this call what that roadmap is going to look like, because I'm very excited about that. So that's it. No, I'm just kidding. So it is also a small preview of what our new branding efforts are going to look like. But
Here's the real life version.
So everybody will be provided with a paper version if you're a paper person, or as many paper versions as you want, and as well as an electronic version of this roadmap. There are 27 major pillars that we work on with our startups currently in varying ways through our staff and mentors and through the connection to experts. All we're doing is we're taking all of the things that we already do and putting it down on paper, and then allowing you to track through these things so that we're making sure we consider all the aspects of our startup. If you're going to be a successful startup, with exception, right? Because, some companies are different, you at least need to know these things. And so also very exciting about the online version or the virtual version is that you can kind of click through these things like this, which I have once spent 10 minutes just doing. But that beside, we will track your exposure to these topics, be it through a workshop, through a conversation with your SME or your mentor in residence or our staff, or another event that we're sending you to or a resource that we're pointing you to. We'll track and make sure you've been exposed to it. Like we did today, we were exposed to some of the team and board development aspect of it. And then in working with our staff, we'll track if you're in progress. So do you understand it? Are you now working on it? And then if it's well developed, and notice it doesn't say done, it says well developed, because let's be real, we're all startups here, and it's not done until you sell the company. So, and then to help guide us further, we break those things down. So nobody said startups were easy. As you can tell, it is a lot of work. Many of you have been doing this for a while and many of you will already be able to check off a lot of these boxes. But this gives just a formalized way to look at your startup and the things that you need work on or that you need to be exposed to. And it gives us a way to track you on these things so that we know where you might need help or what you might be asking next. And so, again, it's a markety way of putting together our program, but it is also a way to help you think about your startup, to give you a guide. And when we built our program initially, UACI has got a 15-year track record. And so along the way, as it's developed, everything's been benchmarked. And so, this is the result of a lot of years of work here and benchmarking across the country.
But I think this is pretty good because, but it has similarity with the iCore program.
So if you look right
Oh.
here, number 5,
yeah,
that's the iCore program. Going through iCore is the tip of the iceberg. Customer discovery, number 5, right? And then if you look at it here, how to establish and test hypotheses, find customers and interview, conducting customer interviews, implementing customer discovery, information received. Okay, so that is just number 5. iCore does not address your accounting system, which is right here, right? It does not address your IP protection strategy. It does not address your competitive analysis. To some extent, it does. It does not address your team development. And look, if you go to 15 here and you look at team development, identifying gaps, talking about org charts, finding potential team members, equity versus employees and contractors, compensation, things of that nature. Some of that stuff I didn't go through today. That'll be for another time. But yeah, isn't that incredible that out of all the things that we know we work on with our startups and all the other programs that we've benchmarked over 15 years, that is number 5 of 27.
But also, I guess, Eric, it would be a good idea if some alumni that have been through the UCI and they've been through this and they became successful. And I wonder what's the success rate of all those get into the program with UECI, and so that we can look into those models and perhaps we can look what their models are or what the systems are, and perhaps we can have some kind of a guidance from whatever.
So that's partially where this came from. First of all, is our successful companies and what they worked on. I would caution you only because if you benchmark a completely separate company in a completely separate industry, for example, then it's not going to help you in your specific company, in your specific industry and time. But these aspects right here, yes, these are the things that we have benchmarked, and what we do have a plan to bring in more alumni. As a matter of fact, for our sponsored launch program, one of our alumni was the judge, right? What's funny is I'll bet you every single one of them will say that the crutch of why they were successful was number 15 right here, which we talked about today, team development. Mm-hmm. And as far as the success of the companies that have come through the program, between 2014 and 2018, so just in those years alone, graduates of our program were able to obtain $47 million in funding. So, it's not zero, but so, yeah.
And there's revenue now too. So I just got new data. There's revenue. Woo! That means they're, in business and actually doing well.
So, but yes, but to Souvenir's point, and something that we are doing, as well, that you're going to see a little bit further down the line. We don't want to throw too much at you at once. We will be bringing in alumni, and in fact, some of our alumni will be the ones giving some of these workshops. So I think that's important as well. The plan for the end of 2020 was to have the alumni come in and engage with you in person, but you might just be seeing them in little boxes for the rest of this year. It all depends on where things go. We are all a worldwide Brady Bunch at the moment. So yes, but it's a great point.
Yeah, even though they are as diverse as the program in the UECI, where from photonics to biotech to computers and things like that, but every successful company have their own similarities that more or less we can look into and follow.
Yeah, and typically those things would be like, for example, how the company was started, right? You know, you'll find similarities in technology transfer companies that you can glean from. So, you know, the company Coda Lucida, which is one of our graduates, successful, you know, the model that they use to build their team with Shiva Planjari, their now CEO, is something that, you know, other technology transfer based companies can follow, right? You know, so you can pull aspects from their success and kind of begin to form what that plan looks like. But again, I always caution people on saying, okay, this is exactly what that company did. And so I'm going to go do those things. Because the reason why we have a roadmap and the reason why the program is customizable is because it's very unique and, you know, down to the personality of the founders. We even evaluate the personality of our founders, not to judge you, but to identify how we're going to work with you. What are those conversations going to look like? What is the cadence of work? Who we introduce them to? What does that all look like? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. It is 1:34 right now. First of all, you know, I appreciate, you know, everybody here for coming to this session. Again, I mentioned we have a different mix. We have some consistency throughout, but we have a different mix each time. I absolutely love seeing all of you, even in the little Brady Bunch boxes. If you have questions, I hope you have questions. Please reach out to us, reach out to Steve, and in 21 days, reach out to our, or excuse me, 11 days, reach out to our SMEs. And I look forward to seeing you next Friday, if not before. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Everyone, have a great weekend.
Thanks.
You
Thank
too.
you so much. Great presentation, and I'm very excited for that roadmap.
Yes, it's coming.
It looks awesome.
Thank you.
So use me as a guinea pig. I'd love to go through that.
You will.
Yeah.
Bye all.